Hello and welcome to this short video where I'll be addressing engineering students. If you're about to graduate, or you have graduated, or you have made sizable progress towards your degree, some congratulations are in order. You've achieved quite a few things. You must be really proud of your achievement. It could not have been easy. We understand that things are challenging, and you must have encountered many, many challenges every step of the way, but you persisted, you persevered, and you've proven what you're capable of doing once you set your mind to it. So congratulations for that. In this short video, we'll talk about not just about what you've achieved, but what you could do, what you should do to make a difference in this world. The generations before you have played their role. They have made sizable contributions to the world that we live in. And yeah, let's face the facts. In certain areas, we in my generation and the generations before mine have been quite succeeded. Let's talk about the area for climate change. Let's talk about the environment. Let's talk about the personal relationships. Let's talk about how we communicate or how we don't communicate. Let's talk about the geopolitical issues. There are several areas where we should have done a better job. But we did what we could with the best of intentions. This generation has delivered what they have, and now they're about to pass the baton over to the next generation to come in and take over and play their role. So this short talk and pretty much talks about that, addresses that, and tells you what responsibilities you now have on your shoulders and how you must face them. But before you start saying that, wait, this is not fair that we are dumping the whole bunch on top of you, there's, it's not just that. We are giving you sort of also the tools. We are pointing out what tools you've got at your disposal to help you achieve what you want to do. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Let's roll up our sleeves. Let's check out the tools, the resources, and the strategies that are now available to you. To become a problem solver, you are an engineer. That makes you a natural problem solver, right? Develop the skill. Every time you come across something that doesn't seem right, don't just accept it. Challenge it. Fight it. Figure out what you can do to fix it. You think it cannot be fixed? Maybe it could be, or maybe it couldn't be, right? But again, you need to be very creative in how you approach something. You'd be surprised at what you could achieve just by persisting with a goal and by being very creative. You can at least make something improve, right? Aim for tiny improvements, and over time it'll give substantial results. You have effectively learned how to take a problem and dissect the problem into smaller components. Maybe as a child you picked up some toys, you took them apart just to see how they work. Now you get to do the same thing but at a global level. So remain creative, remain curious, figure out what the challenges are, figure out what you can do, how you could solve the problems, what resources are at your disposal, and make progress. Again, tiny steps, one thing at a time, one target area at a time, but over time you'll be able to achieve substantial results. So really wanted to underline this part. The mankind needs for you and for you to be at your best. One thing though that you'll notice as soon as you start looking at large problems is that they're very closely intertwined with each other. It has several components and they all work closely together. You cannot just take one part in isolation and solve it and say that you have achieved results. You may have in certain areas, but in most cases you need to take a holistic view at certain thing and then figure out how you would go about solving it. Here's an example. Let's take on the issue of homelessness. How would you solve this? If you are the one in the decision-making capacity and you can figure things out and you can enact some of the solutions, what would they look like? Would you, for example, talk about temporary shelters? So they could be housed, so they don't have to face the elements out in the open. So they have a roof over their head. Would that be a problem? Maybe a place where they can go and get fed multiple times a day. Would that be an issue? What if there are children involved? How would you take care of the children? How would your solution take care of the children? Right? So these are the different things that you must factor in. Why are they homeless in the first place? Did they lose a job? Then do you want to start a job placement service? What about vocation? What maybe they outlived the job and now the technology is very different, and now they need to get trained in certain different areas. Would you now start offering vocational training? Again, so lots of questions we've asked you, right? We haven't gone about their personal challenges, what they must be facing as individuals. Maybe they have mental health issues. Maybe they lack support from the families and they expected that or they needed that. Maybe as a society, we failed to give them the safety net that they would need, that would have needed to succeed. All of these issues, they're sort of all interrelated with each other. You cannot just take one and address the whole issue of homelessness. You need to take a holistic approach. So this is really what this point, what this reminder is about, that unless you take an approach that encompasses all the different segments, unless you try to figure out what all the integration points are, unless you do that, your problem would only work in half the time. So another way to look at it would be that you must develop sort of a world vision, which is like top down, looking at a problem again from end to end, what it is, really to try to understand. Again, you're creative, you're intelligent, you're smart, you've got the background, you've got the academic background. Now, how do you translate that into the real world? This is how to do, to take on the problem, try to figure out, maybe go to the drawing board, figure out what all the different components are and how are they related with each other. One way to explain this would be to describe the forest, the difference between a forest and a tree. If you are a curator for a forest or a tree, what would be your role and how would your role be different if you did forest versus a tree? Let's say that you are responsible for one particular tree, for the nurturing and maintenance of a tree. What would you be doing? What would be your focal areas? You will want to pay very close attention, for example, to the nutrition that the tree is getting, right? How much sunlight it's getting. Maybe the quality of soil, maybe what kind of fertilizer we are providing it. A strong tree must have strong roots. Is there anything like a wall or any other obstacle that's keeping the root from spreading in the right areas? You'll be focusing on all of these things, right? You try to decide when would be the best time to prune the branches so the tree does not get over heavy. That's how you would take care of a tree. What about a forest? Completely different view, different vision. If you're responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of a forest, now you'll be looking at the trees not as individually but as a whole. What kind types of trees do you have, and what can you do to help them grow? Which animals live within the forest, and how would they find how would they survive? What birds do you have? You must pay attention to the streams of water that run through the properties, through the forest. You must develop a vision that manages, controls the whole ecosystem. This really is the point of this recommendation, that when you're taking a holistic view at everything, your vision has to be a part of the whole, and yet it must also work at the smallest level. You cannot solve the problem of a tree by looking at just a forest and not at the tree. And similarly, you cannot look at just a tree without taking a look at the entire forest. All right, let's now continue. Let's now move on. Perseverance. Let's face it. Let's acknowledge the fact that the goals that are ahead of you, the challenges that lie ahead of you, they're hard. They're very tough, and they are going to be very hard. They're going to be impossible even. So how would you go about doing something? How would you go about taking on something that's very challenging, monumental, but it needs to be done just because it's too important? Can you just afford to give up? Can you just take something on and play with it for a while and then say, you know what, I'm going to abandon this. I'm going to move on to something else, something that's less demanding, that's less challenging. That's not the way we operate, right? When you've hit the wall, pause. Yeah, take a breather. Then figure out what happened. Why did we hit the wall? Why did it not work? What can we do to make it work? Again, your creativity, your curiosity, your problem solving skills, they all come into play. Remember, everything you have studied so far, every project you have done, every interaction you have had, every book you have read, every tool you have used, it should be a part of your repertoire. to figure out what the problems are, what the challenges are, and how you would go about doing this. You just cannot start something and try it for a day or two, or maybe a week or two, or maybe for a month or two, and then just walk away from it. World doesn't need people who do this, who take on challenges and then just leave them undone. And the world needs leaders, strong leaders, um, who have perseverance, who have got the patience to sit through the most challenging part of it, the most challenging part of any project. Um, Another really important thing is that, again, from the whole standpoint of trying to understand what the challenges are, a problem well defined is half solved. Remember this, understand this. So as you're trying to explain the problems to others on the team, to others, internal or external team, you need to understand that all your resources, they should all be on the same page in terms of what we're trying to achieve, what goals lie ahead, and how you would inculcate them, include them in the process, in the solutions phase, and try to figure it out. That's really what you need to be. You need to be a problem solver, and you need to be a persistent problem solver. The world needs people like that. So, speaking of the problem solving skills, how would you go about doing this? What tools do you have at your disposal? What resources do you have at your disposal? Let that be the next point of this discussion now. So, how do you achieve results? How do you get things done? By understanding what tools are at your disposal, what resources are available to you. Remember, some of the major problems have already been solved, or some components have been solved. You do not have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to go to the very basic and rebuild something that already has been built and the solution exists out there. You need to incorporate the solution in your final design. How would you do it? By identifying what it is. By first identifying what your needs are for this project, and then trying to figure out what's the best way for you to do something like that, something that's required. Either do it as a part of the project itself, build it, build the component, or if the widget exists which you could incorporate, then maybe it's best use of your time and of your resources to go ahead and incorporate that. Similarly, what tools would you need to succeed? And once you have identified the tools, it's really all about maximizing what you can do with it. How do you use it? You need to get trained in it, right? You need to know what the tool is good for. You need to know what the tool is not good for and what it should not be used for. You need to understand the advanced level of how to utilize that. You need to maybe train other people on how to best utilize that. The point is that for every project that we need to do, we don't necessarily have to do the heavy lifting and do everything ourselves individually. It's all about a team. It's all about putting together a team, understanding, realizing who are on your side, who should be brought in, what skill set is required, what skill set your project needs, and what's available. If there's a gap, let's figure out how you would fill the gap, whether by finding people, by incorporating a solution or a technology or whatever it might be, right? So as a problem solver, as a solution provider, that's really what you must be doing, being able to identify the tools, the resources, and how you would go about utilizing them. Communication, another critical part of this entire presentation. How do you communicate with your peers, with the project sponsors, with the executives who was have supposed to fund the project, with the people who are getting impacted by what the failures are, but the team, technical team, sales team, support team, all these different teams, they all need to work together, right? Ultimately, you're building a solution where all the key players will need to come forward and they need to work together as a different part to play different roles as on different modules for the project, for the delivery of the project. How do you communicate? This is one area where we just cannot emphasize enough on the value of good communication. Whether it's verbal communication or written, they're both equally important, critically important. Remember, we are living in a global world now where your project team doesn't necessarily have to be in the same room, so you can maybe use your body language, your hands and gestures to explain a process. They could be sitting halfway across the world. You may not even be able to have real-time conversation with them. You may just have to rely upon written documentation. How would you do it? It's challenging. at the very core is challenging, because remember the cost of miscommunication, they could go in different direction. So for you to keep everything on track, the level of communication's got to be really high. And the best way to do this is to start today, is to start working on your communication skills, verbal communication skills, presentation skills, public speaking skills, being able to take a concept and being able to explain that in all different methods. You need to be able to take a very complex system and explain that to a layperson who does not have the technology or the technical background that you have it. And you need to be able to explain the process and get them to walk away with a complete understanding of what was required, and most importantly, what you're asking them to do for you. Similarly, you need to be able to explain the concept to the engineers, going to the lowest level of technical detail, excruciating detail, for them to understand what the challenges are and what needs to be done, how you expect them to fix it for you. So this level of communication, whether in person, verbal, or written, is critical, is important. And as to the language of communication, it's hard for us to come up with a world where English is not a central language, where you can rely upon the local or regional languages and be able to encompass the entire project end to end. It's very hard to imagine a scenario like that. So it must be in English. Even if it's your secondary language, develop the skills. There are resources available out there. Again, as we've said earlier, we've said multiple times, there's no challenge of lack of resources. You need to find the resources. What you need is a tool that you need. The effective use of language is a tool that you must have under your belt. You must have at your disposal, and seek whatever help you might need to make that happen. Your aptitude to learn. This, friend, is one of the most important ingredient in any successful person. Your success depends to a very large extent on how you approach your problems, right? How do you approach the challenges that lie ahead of you? We talked about how difficult they could be. We talked about how insurmountable they might appear to be. We talked about how impossible they might be. And yet we asked you, we urged you to stay on track, to have find the perseverance, to find the support that you need, utilize the resources that you might have access to, and make progress. Even if it's not a huge moonshot that you can achieve in one move, at least take tiny steps into the right direction towards your panacea, towards the final frontier. The point of this is that how excited you are about approaching problems. This really drives, this determines who you are, and this determines how you are perceived by those around you. So you must understand the context. Every problem has a context. So every person you talk to, they can teach you a thing or two. Give them the opportunity. Every experience you've had, it's an opportunity for you to learn, to enhance your skills. Avail that opportunity. Every opportunity you have had, every book you have read, every encounter you have had, every customer phone call you have taken, every angry customer you have dealt with, it's all opportunities collectively presented to you, so you can make improvements in how you operate, and then therefore how you can influence others around you to operate. So learn to jump in. Learn to raise your hand. Learn to say, yes, I can do it. Even if you don't know what all the different components are, but you can figure things out on the fly. We have proven that you are a good learner. And you know that going forward you will continue to be a good learner. So jump in, volunteer yourself, volunteer your time, volunteer your availability. Say yes. Most importantly, be known as the kind of person who jumps at opportunity, who's excited about presenting new challenges, and who's eager to solve them. That's the kind of a person you want to be known as, who's energized. And not just superficially. So we're not just talking about using empty words and empty gestures and phrases. We are talking about becoming the type of a person who solves challenges, who solves problems. The last point that we want to cover in this presentation is your ability to juggle multiple projects. We call it project management, project coordination, whatever terminology you want to ascribe to it. The key is that at any given point in time, whether in your professional world or in your personal life, you'll be dealing with multiple things all coming to you at the same time, coming at different paces, different speeds at the same time. How would you solve them? How would you stay focused on every item all at the same time? You need to learn how to compartmentalize. Absolutely. You need to know how to focus on effectively one thing at a time while pausing other efforts enough so you're able to give all your focus and attention to one item and then move on to the next item. And that when that has been addressed, then you move on to the third item and so on and so forth. This ability to be able to juggle multiple things and to be able to stay on top of multiple things is another crucial requirement in any successful employee, whether you're an entrepreneur or you are a worker or you're a manager, whatever level you're working at. Even as a project team member, we would love for you to have the skills in juggling, project management, being able to handle multiple levels of things, multiple priorities. And when things come to you, their priorities will determine how much attention they need, right? So you need to be really on top of this. And as a part of this analysis, we have a separate training available on critical path analysis. Please avail yourself of that. You really must understand that when something is coming to you, we just a moment ago talked about its priority, how critical, how important it is. But where does it fit in the whole scheme of things? Even if something is less important, but imagine a construction is going on and they're waiting on a part which is not critical. The house will not collapse when the part is not there, but yet they're waiting for this part to be available or else they cannot continue with the construction. So even though it may be a low priority in terms of the criticality of the item, but just because somebody is waiting for it and the work has effectively stopped, that makes it a critical item. So it's on the critical path. This type of an analysis you must be able to perform on whatever you need to be doing. And when you assign priority to a certain thing, the team around you will inherit the same level of priority and focus. So friends, we began this presentation by talking about the state of the world. We talked about how difficult things could have been, how difficult things are. We talked about the challenges, opportunities that you might have, and we told you that you've got the right tools, the right skills, the right background. You've proven yourself with your technical competence that you're able to achieve all of that. Yeah, there may be a bleak picture out there, but with your persistence, with the right attitude, with the right personality, you're able to address them. Let's now return back to the same state of the world concept, but now we'll do it with a different twist. We'll talk about where are the opportunities, how we live in this world, how we interact with the world, how we interact with each other, how do we, what kind of transportation modes do we have available? How does the healthcare work? What are the challenges? Every system there are challenges. In every integration there are challenges. What are they? How do you find opportunities? There's a saying that if you give a child a hammer, the whole world becomes a nail. Effectively, you go about every time there's a crevice on the wall, every time you see a bump on the table or on anything, you start hitting it with a hammer with the intention to be able to level it. You now have this hammer in your hand. With that tool, with your education, with the training that you have got, you now have got the hammer. And now your role it is to go and find the opportunities where you can use the hammer, effectively use the hammer and solve the world. So yes, there's some pressure. We can absolutely understand that. But then again, there would be a pressure when things are critical, when things are important. And the better a job you do, the better a job your immediate surrounding, everybody else around you does, the more we can all benefit and reap from the glorious, incredible future that lies ahead of us. So remember this point that the future story has not been written. The fact that you take the history of the whole story of climate change and how we seem to be progressing in the wrong direction. There's a graph which is pointing downwards. The future has not been written. We're not quite there yet. Yes, we might be trending in the wrong direction, but again, with the right attitude, with the right approach, with the right problem solving skill, with the right awareness of what we need to do, we can change the curve. we can turn things around. That's really the opportunity that lies ahead of you. With the right skills that you've got, with the right tools that are at your disposal, go make things happen. Go make the world a better place. Best wishes to you.